over to you.
Okay. We're going to do something slightly different. I've been talking to Nathaniel about this, and we're going to try to move to a agenda-driven meeting because I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to say uh, things that they would like to know about, and we get through the list quicker, but then have time for the topics. And then at the end, obviously, time for anybody who wants to linger and just talk. So that's the way we're going to run it and see how it works. Hopefully, this will be an improvement and it will balance the time among the individuals a little better. Okay, my name is Dave, KV0S, and this week I've been working on K9Q radio. Um, I'm trying to figure out some of the things that I normally don't do in a Unix system, which is deal with multiple users at the same time. So I'm hoping Phil shows up sometime so I can ask a question. So that's mine. And so next on the list, we have Nathaniel, W2NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Yes, so how does this agenda-driven format work? Do we give agenda items now or
Um, Anything you've done towards the project, and then any agenda items you want me to write down and come
uh,
back to.
I've continued just trying to manage everything. I think the thing that I'm very interested in hearing about is how we're going to move forward on the hardware side of this project because I think we're making great progress on the KA9Q side and the RX888. So we've got that. I know, so maybe we can talk about that a little bit tonight. And I know that some of us also have a meeting on Wednesday where we'll be chatting about that a little bit more. So,
Okay. Um, I've got those two on the list. And next on the list, we have Dan in for XWE. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, thanks, Dave, and good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'd like to have a little brief from Nathaniel on there was an announcement a couple of weeks ago, I think, about a HAMSI and ARRL. And I was kind of wondering if you could give us a little bit of a heads up on what's going on with that activity. And see, as far as something I've done this week, not really anything all that productive. I've kind of gone through my scripts again, and I'm taking out some old OS oriented stuff and adding some new stuff, and that's about it. So
Oh,
back to you, Dave.
okay. Next on the list is Dave, KD0EAG. Go ahead, Dave.
Hello, yeah. I've been working pretty intensely on some of the hardware stuff. And it goes faster and then it goes slower. There's surprises, but I'll be happy to take any questions people have about that. But not a lot of not a lot, not a lot for me to say at this moment.
Okay. I'm sure you'll chime in on the hardware development side uh, discussion. Okay. Next on the list, we have Mike, AAAK. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, thanks very much. Greetings to everyone listening. Still taking care of my wife. Back to you, Dave.
I do want to congratulate Mike. I actually made a tarball of the Tangerine site, and a huge portion of that is audio recordings by Mike. So he has been a busy person. We have all the way back to when we were doing TeamSpeak when we first started. So
It's quite an archive.
it is quite an archive. So if you don't know it's there, it's well worth it, and check it out.
Yeah, if you have
Okay.
insomnia, it's terrific.
And next on the list, we have Bill, N8ET. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say. I haven't been on here in probably 6 months, so I'm coming back up for air and just want to see what's going on. So I'll sit and listen tonight.
Okay, and thank you for coming back. Appreciate it. And let's see, next on the list is Bill Engelkey, AB4EJ. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I've been dealing with my wife's had a big surgery to work on her knee. She had a knee replacement about 11 months ago, and it was even more painful after the surgery than before the surgery. So the surgeon had to go in and take it all apart again this past Thursday and clean out scar tissue and put in a new spacer and this and that. But in the meantime, I burned about 28 SD cards for the grape rollout, got those all individually configured for each user and tested. So each one of them tested to see that those can upload successfully to PSWS server. And all that was FedEx to the New England team, and they have them in hand now, and they are starting to put them into final systems. Hopefully send them out later this week. So back to Ned.
Okay. So next on the list, we have Bob, N5BRG. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I had some partial success with the K9Q radio this past couple of weeks. I've got it to copying data or information and dropping a few bits. Still some more work to be done there, but it does seem like it's trying to come up and run. I spent the day working on my dipoles, my folded dipoles. I got 2 of them. I think I'll have them up tomorrow morning, hopefully by noon, and be connecting the radios and ready to start trying to copy data and log that in. So that's it for me for now.
Okay. Any agenda items?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And next on the list, we have David McGaw, N1HAC. Go ahead, David.
Good evening, everyone. Not much happening on the Tangerine or Clementine front, though hoping to get to that shortly. But moving ahead on our Antarctic and the AM Doppler projects, our students have been away. Dartmouth has an odd schedule, as some may know. We're on quarters, so they're just getting back. We'll see what we can get them onto this week. And continuing to get very much rained on. I just found out that the Red Sox, our Boston team, have the dubious distinction of having the wettest season for their games, 3.5 inches of rain more than any other stadium. So it just keeps continuing. And then of course we have this big hurricane off the coast that's coming up that I'm sure we're going to get rain bands from it, even though it's going to be way out there. But you know,
What?
Life is that's weather in New England. If you don't like
Yes.
it, wait 5 minutes.
David, it's raining here, it's raining in Michigan, and it's headed your way.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot.
So anyway, any items for the agenda?
No agenda items that I could
Okay.
think of at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the list, we have, let's see, Franco, K4VZ. And Franco, we're basically comments on what we've done and any agenda items or topics you want to come back to later.
Just a couple of things. So the first of all is I've been working. Good evening, everyone. By the way, I've been working on getting Tom running with his Raspberry Pi, and I think about 2 days some kind of drop packets that I still can explain what happens. This is number one. Number two, I've worked also on creating, I don't know if Phil, you saw my emails where I created a module for the SDR Play for the new latest version of K9Q Radio. So it works here, so I can stream of that. And I know it's not open source, but if you want to include it, the code is in the repository. And last but not
I
least, I
did see
watched
that.
a
I'll
few.
get to it when I have a chance.
Yeah, no rush. And last but not least, I watched a few videos on the GNU Radio conference last week. That was really interesting, in my opinion. Back to Nat.
Okay, very good. And next on the list, let's see, is Jay, WB8 SBI. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Let me turn my camera on here, make sure it's going. Howdy, everybody. Nothing really new here to report, Ham, science-wise. Nathaniel, I talked to the the meeting of the Hazel Park Club is booked for this Thursday, this Wednesday, and I'm going to try and strong arm, twist arm, and do whatever's necessary to get you on to either the October or November meeting, if that's okay with you. The December meeting is a Christmas party meeting, so that's not going to be it. But I want to get there, and I also want to try and get the Space Weather Woman onto our thing. So thank you for your yes, we still want to get you on the program here. So otherwise, not really a whole lot of ham size stuff that is going on here. I know I've missed a few meetings of what's going on, just schedule conflicts galore. Been really busy with my Society of Automotive Engineers cybersecurity stuff. Been eating up a lot of my time. But as we say in the meeting, it's like making sausage. Don't ask the process, but the result is very good. So I've been involved in a lot of sausage making. So other than that, other thing, very good news. Since 1974, when I was first licensed, I have been trying, and I finally got it. Finally, I got my DXCC.
Oh, very good.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I got my worked all states earlier this year, but finally got DXCC. Woohoo, woohoo, woohoo.
Yeah. Very good.
So anyway, that's about all I have for the gang here tonight.
Okay.
For those of you that are members of the tribe, let me wish you all, for those that are members of the tribe, Lashana Tova, Happy New Year.
Oh.
So, which for everybody else, New Year's in the Jewish calendar starts this Friday at sundown local time, and goes for 48 hours is the holiday. So take care, everybody. And
okay.
I'll be reading the mail here on the rest of the evening. Back to Net Control.
You're sure, Jay.
And next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EY. Go ahead, Jonathan. Any agenda items for the meeting?
Hi. Yeah, it's been a pretty busy week for me. Family issues. Nothing really radio related. But there has been some. If people are interested, there has been some EBNOT transmissions by DL3JMM. You can look at the details on the VLF Natural Radio group on groups.io. I had planned on trying to see if I could get those, but I just haven't had a chance because I've been so busy. Bill, NAET, I forget if I mailed to you the shark fin board for your seismometer. Did you get that? Okay, good, good. Yeah, because once I saw you, I instantly remembered. I'm still trying to find a coil for that project. But once I do, I'll be able to put it together. But I still have all the parts and everything. I just got to find a coil, and I want to try it out. I have been delving a little bit more into seismic stuff, which is also a very interesting science. Unfortunately, there was that terrible earthquake in Morocco, but I have two seismic instruments, and my plan is to get some data acquisition on them. I'm gonna install them in my basement. I'll mostly capture road noise, but I should be able to capture something since they're 30-second instruments, 30-second periods. Um, and um, um, and the and I finally received all of the parts for the digitizer boards that I've been meaning to build for them. But just wanted to mention that seismic study is a pretty good complement to VLF study. It's always good to listen to the earth, and whether it's through mechanical vibration in the ground due to faults and other phenomena, or in the very low frequency band in the electromagnetic spectrum, there's always something interesting to see. So lately, that's what I've been doing, but I've been kind of disconnected. Other than that, that's all I have. Back to the net.
Okay. Were any of those agenda items you want us to come back and talk about?
No.
Okay.
No. Oh, no. That was just a regular
Okay.
report.
We're trying to develop, if you came in late, develop a system where people can check in and give their agenda items, and then we can spend focus time on each of the topics. So going to try to change the pattern. It hopefully give everybody a chance to make sure their interests are included in the discussion. So next on the list, I need to see who I can see. So I think, do I, Tom, oh, and Phil Karn, K9Q. So,
yeah, once again, I got to get out of here for a local microwave club meeting, but
yes.
hi. See, is Rob here tonight?
I don't see him.
I don't see it. Anyway, we've been going great guns on getting my stuff going, adding features and tracking down bugs and so forth. More and more people seem to be using it, which is great. So basically, I'm adding features as well as tracking down bugs at the same time. Anybody has a wish list, or especially reports of bugs, please get them to me while I'm on a roll with this stuff.
Will you be here?
What's that?
Be here for a few minutes?
Well, while I get my shoes on.
Okay. The issue that I wanted to bring up, there's a couple of questions that people had about K9Q setup.
Okay.
I'm having kind of trouble I have it working, but I mean, I've had the radio running for several months, but I'm trying to work with the alternate users, and particularly dealing with the recordings as a separate user. And some of that is kind of glitchy in the way I've got it. I think I have it running right now.
Oh, do you mean in terms of permission problems on Linux?
Yes.
Okay, my convention is to run the radio itself runs under user ID radio with
Yes.
groups radio, plug dev, and users. And plug dev, the reason I chose those is because the devices, most of those the USB radio devices usually appear with the group permissions plug dev. You have to be a member of that group to use it. I think the Fun Cube uses user. That's why I'm in it. But my convention is to try to make all files that are read by radio, owned by radio, and also group radio and readable by that group. So you can put yourself in the group and write them without having a permission problem, having to become root. I don't like becoming root all the time. To me, it's kind of brute force, and it's conducive to nasty mistakes.
Well, that's the solution I did come to finally after.
Good. Okay. As for recording files, I usually have a separate user ID named recordings or something like that with group radio again, so that all files are run by that. But this is all a matter of personal preference. I mean, if somebody has a better way to do it, let me know. I can certainly change it.
I think it's
just don't like doing everything as root. That's all.
I think it's appropriate if we can come up with an explanation for new users, so that they have some idea what that is.
Yeah.
Because I've run Linux boxes for years or Unix boxes for years, but some of these things, I was not generally a complicated sysadmin, so I hadn't had to deal with them before. Some of the cross user issues.
I mean, people think it should be simplified. I'm certainly open to that. I just don't like running everything as root or having to run everything as root. That's all.
I agree as well.
Yeah.
Did anybody else have a question for Phil before he leaves?
Yeah, I'd like to know if is your GitHub thing up to date with the changes?
Oh yeah, it's up to date. If anything, I probably keep it up to date too often. Sometimes I push over broken code and then fix it a few minutes later. I've gotten into the bad habit of using it to move code from one machine to another in my house. Yeah. The problem is if you rsync it and then you do a git pull, you have to get rid of all the copies that you, even if they're identical, which to me seems like a bug in Git. I mean, it should, look the other way if the file is already what you want it to be. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But so yeah, that's what happens. So yeah, if the code's broken from GitHub, just wait a few minutes and do another pull. Especially if it's like 2 a.m. my time,
I want to get Tom McDermott here. Do you have any questions for Phil?
He was here a second ago. Oh, there you are.
But we have a lot of discussion tonight on performance and packets.
Things.
Is your mic on? You seem far away from it.
We can
sorry
hear
about
you.
that. Is that better?
That's better.
All right. I've got a shotgun mic, forgot to turn it around.
Wrong mic.
I'll do a real quick report. Frank has been enormously helpful the last 2 weeks. I've gotten RTL SDR working first at 48K and then this week at 192K IQ into GNU Radio. I'm running into a few issues and would like to talk about the testing I've done. So perhaps we ought to put that on as an agenda item.
Okay. You should be able to go quite a bit faster than that. I mean, I think the hardware is capable of what, 2 meg, something like that.
Yeah, well, I upgraded from a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus having more than 10% packet loss rate to a 4, getting me down to about 0.4% packet loss rate.
It should be 0. It should be 0.
Yeah, something's wrong there because we're running RTL SDRs at 1 megasample per second. We don't lose any.
Well,
we've been running them on our Pi 2s to start.
Well, this is running 2 megasamples per second, and the difference between the 3 and the 4 is a 20-to-1 improvement in the error rate.
Yeah, there shouldn't be an error rate.
It's a test. Oh, well, we'll talk about that on.
Are you doing anything other on the Pi other than running KNIQ radio?
I'm running it's the only thing.
And it should not
its
be
load is down. Its load is down at 20%, 25%.
Did you calculate the FFT wisdom files? Recalculate that? Okay, good.
And so
that can make a difference as much as 2 to 1.
Yeah, those, I'm trying to debug. I've loaded iPerf 3. I've tried all kinds of network configurations with and without switches, direct cable between the consumer and the producer. And so that's going to take a long time. We might want to cover that a
And,
little
and
later.
Wi-Fi is not involved, right?
No Wi-Fi.
Good, okay. The one question I have for you about the RTL SDR is AGC. The thing has a low dynamic range, and getting AGC algorithms right for devices like that is really tough. So I'm very interested in feedback you have on that.
Yeah, I've ignored all of those issues in terms of trying to get error-free performance.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know why you'd be losing packets at such a low sample rate. I mean, I regularly run an AirSpy R2 at 20 megahertz real with no problems at all. No
Yeah.
loss.
Yeah, the 3B has just given me huge packet loss rates.
Well, if a 4 works solidly, then we just know the 3B is too slow. I don't think the standard kernel
It's not
for
that
the
simple.
Pi is real time.
Yeah, the 4, if I run through my router or switch or a separate router or switch, the 4 gives me about a 0.4% loss rate. If I go direct cable from the host to the Pi, my loss rate goes up to about 50%.
Whoa,
Huh.
weird.
Very counterintuitive result.
Yeah, and what's the total aggregate output data rate?
I'm running one 192K IQ channel.
Oh, that's nothing.
That's right. And that's why, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, you've got a setting problem someplace.
Somewhere.
Yeah, that's very odd because, as I say, we're using our Pi 3s running 1 megasample per second, not 2, of course, but 1 megasample per second and doing dual FFT
Yeah. So
all at the same time.
So I've been trying to track this down. I put iPerf 3 on everything, and I'm running iPerf under all conditions. And I get about the same. The Raspberry Pi sending to the Ubuntu, I'm getting retries on iPerf 3. From Ubuntu to Raspberry Pi, no retries. And that's
retries?
regardless of whether they're directly connected or connected through switches.
What do you mean
things like
retry?
that.
This is a real time stream. There are no retries.
When I run iPerf 3, I'm getting retries.
What's iPerf 3?
iPerf 3 is a performance testing program on Linux, and it measures the throughput. I'm getting about 950 megabits per second RPi 4 to Ubuntu and Ubuntu to RPi 4.
Oh, you're running this at the same time as
Yeah, I run iPerf 3 client and iPerf 3 server. So this is while nothing KA9Q is running. I'm just trying to baseline the Ethernet connections and the performance. And I am getting errors with iPerf 3.
Oh, okay. I think you got something wrong with your network connection. The next question I was going to have is how many FFT threads are you running? The default is 2, which is usually adequate.
I'm running 4 threads.
4? Okay.
4.
Try 2. Sometimes more threads can actually make it worse.
Okay, I'll try 2 threads.
Try 2. I mean, either should work. I mean, I've been running this with a FunCube dongle, which samples at fixed 192 kilohertz for years on a Pi 3 as part of a APRS iGate, and it's just fine. It's only a few percent.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, do I have Ethernet problems? I've tried I've tried multiple different switches, multiple different cables, getting rid of patch panels, different hosts, different clients, and I am getting some consistent iPerf 3 errors. So I'm trying to isolate
You got
where
something
those might
in your
be.
network, yeah. Anyway, I got to get out of here. Any other questions? Quickie?
Any other K9Q questions?
Yeah.
Rob just showed up.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah,
Hello.
Rob and I have been going great guns, so we can probably fill in the rest of the story.
Okay. Rob, the one thing I want to let you know, we let Phil go because he has a microwave meeting. But we're trying something different of collecting agenda items and checking in, and then going back to the agenda items one at a time. And we just finished the K9Q one because Phil wanted to go to a meeting. So
That's fine. I think I have a pretty good idea what Phil's up to. So
okay. Did you want to, I mean, developments or things that you've done this week? Do you want to say anything about that?
I'm debugging problems with the Whisper Demon and things, but mostly I've been working on my one of the things is getting together my RX 888s. I've upgrading them so that they accept external clock input and do something to address the thermal problem. So
well, let me go through the agenda list that we have. Nathaniel, I don't know if he's still there. Nathaniel, are you there?
I am here, yes.
There were two things that, one was you were going to do a briefing and somebody asked, the other one is other things related to next month's eclipse.
Other things related to next month's eclipse. I'm not sure. So I think Dan asked me for some sort of a briefing, and I wasn't exactly sure what he meant by that.
Okay, well, I can expound on that just a little bit. I was just kind of concerned, are you going to do like a contest type event, or was a little unsure on exactly what it was going to be?
Okay, yes, there is a contest type event, and that's called the Solar Eclipse QSO Party. So
Okay.
that's very similar to what we did the last time. We're doing that. We are also doing the grape experiment, where we're distributing these grape receivers that are going to be monitoring the Doppler shift of WWV. We have a group of hams up in New England. They call themselves the New England Grape Group. They have fabricated 15 grape stations that are kind of all uniform and the same and up to a high standard of production. We're going to be sending those out to hams to stations across the US. So they're going to field those receivers that have already been built. We also have some people that are building their own receivers. So we're collecting data that way as well. So, and then, so we have the Eclipse QSO party. We have the grape experiment. Steve Serwin is also running an experiment where he's going to have some people send chirps to each other during the eclipse. I don't know how many people he has involved in that, but I am helping him with the analysis of that a little bit.
Okay, great. Just kind of curious. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well then we have two hardware related ones. One is David asked about running two RX 88s synced.
Yeah, or multiples, but can you synchronize RX 2
Does
888s?
anybody have an opinion?
I will, as a introduction to that, I was talking with Steve Kepler, who's another one of us rocket scientists, and he's interested in using SDR of some sort, which we've actually done for many years in various ways. He keeps going back to the USRPs. Now, he's mentioned the RX 888, but as far as I know, that hasn't been run multi-channel synchronized. But I do know that the RTL SDRs can be, hence the Kraken SDR. So I was wondering if anyone has worked out. I know we can synchronize the frequency, log frequencies, but can you make them phase synchronous?
Glenn, N6GN, and Phil are working on that. And Glenn, who actually is line of sight to WWV, has set up a pair of 888s that have of course, common GPS disciplined clocks, but more importantly, they have a stimulus to the input, and it's on it's on Glenn's agenda, Phil's agenda, to do the analysis work to make sure that his software can find the to compensate for the differences in the transmission path. So that is a very active area. In fact, the most active area of Glenn, who doesn't participate in this group, but is very active in with Phil and the rest of us. So Glenn is an extremely experienced engineer, of HP spectrum analyzer engineer.
Right.
So we will, and of course Phil as well. So that I think that the two of them together will address this, and I think that it's very likely that two or more. In fact, it could, it's kind of extensible.
Yeah,
two or
that's
more.
the idea.
Yeah,
Our
it's
work usually uses like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
channels.
So the architecture is fully extensible. It's just there's the hardware, I think, is there. They're a little uncertain about the stimulus that they will use to apply to the inputs. One could apply, of course, a single pulse, a full scale sample, with pulse, but the intensity of the impulse on individual, higher frequencies, of course, is diluted. So they're just at the stage of starting to investigate what kind of stimulus signal they can produce that will be, and I don't, I know Glenn has been away from home, so he hasn't worked on it this week, but
right.
This is, I think that it's in very good hands. I think it would be, I don't think they need any outside input at this point. I think they have the hardware and the software team in place, and the hardware. I know Glenn has put together the two 888s and is just waiting. And of course, they have WWV as the kind of reference source, as so line of sight. So I think that project's pretty well taken care of.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they're doing it. It's ideally you would be running them all off a common clock.
Oh,
so that they're
they will
synchronized.
Yeah.
Yes. No. There's no question. They're going to be on the same clock. They've already.
No, I don't mean the same reference clock, but the sample clock being identical.
Yes,
So
that's what. Well, I think there's some question. Although I think that has been resolved. We also have another participant. I don't think he's joined us. Another HP Spectrum and RF engineer, Tom. Oh, Bush or something. I can't. I've just got to know Tom.
Oh, Brune.
Yeah.
Tom
Is
Brune?
he the new one that just has been
Yes.
coming in on the SCQPs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tom is also extremely experienced in this. I think that and he's very experienced with the 2208s. So he
Yes.
knows
Yes,
the
Tom
internals
Bruce.
of it. So apparently one area of uncertainty was that it was, is there any uncertainty in the sample delay through the 22.8? And apparently not. Tom's experience with the part suggests that
there shouldn't be through there. No.
So there's no variable delay there. So the challenge really is to provide a stimulus and for Phil to implement a a search algorithm that finds us the simple. That's I think I'm not now. I'm an observer, a kind of a distant observer on that process. Kind of I try to encourage Phil and Glenn to stay engaged on it, but I think it's mostly Glenn is very focused. It's his area of greatest interest.
Yeah, I'm very interested in keeping up on that. The variability would be in the USB interface, not in the actual.
That Phil's can compensate that in his software.
Right.
But
Okay.
but that's not implemented.
Yeah, one question that came up there using WWV is the bandwidth is low in modulation. So
Yes.
the uncertainty would be fairly high if you're
According-
using just that.
Yeah, according to Phil, there's also problems with the actual modulation technique at WWV. They use plate modulation on some of the transmitters, and as a result, there's phase shift introduced at the transmitters on, I don't know, 5 and 10 and 15. Apparently, it's not present on 20 and 25, or 2.5. I don't remember the exact, but I remember this was news to me. But WWV isn't quite the frequency reference that you think it might be. That there's and so
well, you know, it's repeatable at least.
Yes. Well, no, I think it's a function of the voice modulation. You see,
Yes.
introduces a
Right.
phase shift.
Well,
So so
Okay.
there's that's all this is
now,
secondhand.
isn't that why Christina wanted them to put in some other modulation methods,
Yeah.
Nathaniel?
Yeah, part of it was to characterize the transmitters.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's
Yeah, that's why we have
the
all those
the
signals
swoop up and the swoop down,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some other modulation components that she talked them into putting in there.
Yep, there's
Right.
broadband, there's white noise, and there's ticks, both of which are useful
Yes.
for characterizing that, as well as the.
I have a question for David. Does your project use Krakens at all? As just a gang of
We
RTOs?
don't. We're using the sorts of things that our AM Doppler project are picking up don't need to be that tightly time synchronous.
Right.
But we have done stuff in the past where we're doing HF imaging, where we would use that.
I've been interested in using it not for the range finding, but more just to use as tightly synced radios.
Right.
And
Well,
and
one system that I've developed was we use an old chipset of analog devices, the 6644 A to D, and then the 6620 digital down converter. And we've flown those originally on rockets. It's the chipset that was used in the SDR 14s, if people remember those. And I've done up to 3 channels fully synchronized.
Okay.
For imaging. And that's sort of what we're looking to replace.
Yeah. Well, you might mention when you can things that you figure out on that.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Well then,
I guess I just also put the word in or whatever that as we develop our version of the RX-888 hardware, see if we can make sure that we get multi-channel synchronization built into it.
I would like very much to, keep apprised of, what anyone who's interested in that is thinking, so that, we can make accommodation for anything in our work going forward. A lot of times I don't hear much from some quarters because they're busy talking to more knowledgeably than me, but I'd like to know so that we can kind of put whatever might be useful into future designs.
so Dave, can we go to your agenda item? So Dave is essentially trying to compile the components and put them into a system that can be where we can generate boards with similar characteristics to the RX-88, and we can fix maybe some of the problems in the original boards. Isn't that right? or am I misconfiguring?
Well, I've tried to get some schematics that are in a format that people, that's common enough that people can work with them if they wish to. And I've tried to strip a lot of the work that that other people have done, all the good work that that Oscar and various other people have done, down to the minimum at this point. That's what I've been working on. And then with the idea of building it back up without anything that doesn't interest us, with, people can say, hey, let's just put this component in there or this feature into it, and we can spin some boards pretty quick that we're familiar with, and to get where we have something that can be tweaked, tuned for the immediate needs of this group and anyone else, really. But all the designs of all the previous ones are really not in any editable format, and so that bothers me. So I'm putting those. I'm trying to make things that go up on GitHub that others can build from. That's moving along steadily, if not fast. I've been working hard on it, and I'm learning a lot about making a little more complex boards than I've done in the past. Not really trying to do anything complex at the moment, but I'm learning that, especially with the fast turnaround people, what the meaning of some of the limitations of their process. I just don't have a lot of experience with this, but I'm getting there quicker than I would have wanted to have to. And I guess we're going to have a meeting on Wednesday, some of us to discuss, kind of the state of things and make sure that everybody's, in the loop. And I hope to have something at least for myself that I'm going to send off and have fabbed within a short period of time, let's say 2-3 weeks, something like that. But that'll be a very minimal thing. But once that's there, anything else should follow from that.
So Dave, one thing to mention is you're focusing on the HF side of the RX-88.
There seemed to be so very many, it was, there didn't seem to be a lot of interest. I mean, that seems the other capability works well as far as it goes, as far as I know, but I haven't heard a lot of interest in that.
In other words, you're not implementing the tuner chip.
I'm skipping that. Yeah.
Right.
And the availability of those chips or alternatives, that's out of my scope for right now. If someone wants it, this will be there to plop it back in. But there's other things, other features that were in the original specification for the Tangerine. Coherency, possibly multiple coherence in the received data, the
Clocking.
What?
Clocking.
Well, that's coherent clocking. What all? Some ability to calibrate some features that might assist in calibrating, giving absolute power sense for, there are people out there who are interested in things like this for astronomical purposes as well. And so the radio astronomy guys all want to know not just the coherent timing, but they want to know what the absolute temperature of something is. And
in other words, they want accurate amplitudes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, one way they do things is you have a known noise source that you switch into all channels.
And that's in the original spec for the Tangerine also. So, and I was talking to Tom earlier this week about that and looking back on the older designs, trying to find out how that was implemented. Just have a little kind of a modular toolbox where pieces could be popped in, and give people who ask these questions, a lot of them seem to come up over and over again from different directions. And you say, yeah, you can do that. You put this in there and you send it off somewhere, and abracadabra, in a couple of weeks, you've got some boards. The uncertainty and the expense, I think there's a lot that could be saved. The uncertainty could be gotten out by using kind of the same baseline, instead of starting de novo on every new radio, having just a basic kit. But that's my feeling about it. I am also looking at other technologies that may be of interest in the future, and that may go to wider bandwidths should there be interest in them. I don't completely comprehend how even the RX-888 can give equivalent response across the wide spectrum that it's able to capture. How you can say that, what you're seeing at 10 meters is, at least if you're just looking at relative phenomenon, but is this thing flat? It's like a loudspeaker, is it flat from 10 megahertz to 30?
Mostly it's going to be in the transformers you're using.
Yeah.
Because the A to Ds are generally very flat. In fact, they usually have input response such that you can undersample. In other words, you can put in frequencies above Nyquist and it's still close to flat. There are 3 dB frequencies, very high.
And is that all in the software, done in software, or is it something that needs?
Oh no, that's the hardware itself. It just doesn't. It's very high speed. Doesn't have a limitation.
I think the 2208 has a 700 megasample front end, so it samples. Although its output rate is at most 133 megasamples. It actually, the sample and hold at the front end is at 700. And Phil has talked about implementing, if you had a suitable front end filter, because of that fast sample and hold, you could exploit the aliasing features, right, and actually have the 888 itself tuned to the VHF bands, and without a down converter. And the advantage of that would be, of course, you would get rid of the tuner, and the tuner has this narrow 10 megahertz among its other limitations, a 10 megahertz down convert bandwidth. So you've got this 60 megahertz wide sample space going into this from this tuner that's only giving it 10 megahertz on a slice of the spectrum. So one of Phil's background projects is to try to implement that, but you'd need some filters, band specific filters 2 meters and 6 meter, 2 meter. Well, not for 6 meters, it'll sample that directly, but at 2 meters and 70 and 23 centimeters. Well, you wouldn't go that high, but for at least for 2 meters and for 70, it's possible that you could actually just filter the front end and feed it into the 2208 and actually get 50 megahertz of spectrum. But that's a background project.
Yeah, well, we've done that where you just have a bandpass filter that's centered around, gives you your above Nyquist band. So it's an anti-aliasing filter, but you're actually selecting an alias.
You're selecting an alias, yeah. Well, Phil's talked about doing that, but of course we'd have to get somebody to implement find the bandpass filters and and who's listening up there right now. That's right now there's almost no whisper transmissions up there. There's a few, but not many because nobody's going to transmit because nobody's receiving, and then you're not receiving because there's no transmitters. It's anyway, it's a possibility, but I wouldn't invest, Dave. I wouldn't invest much time worrying about that. It's just just getting the 888 working for 0 to 30 megahertz is a challenge enough. It's
and what I'm trying to say is, don't worry about the bandwidth. Any bandwidth problems with the circuitry. The primary limiting is the transformer, and we just select that for
what you do need with the 888. Okay, if you're going to sample, well, I mean, you're planning to have a low pass filter in it, I suppose. So there's and for the users of the existing, I don't know if I can get this, for existing 888s, if you want to run them as most people are and ought to run them at 66.4 megasamples, you need a low pass filter in front of it, or you're going to get aliasing problems because the 888 itself has a 60, and we're not certain of how good a low pass filter that 66 megahertz low pass filter they put inside the 888 is. Phil, this is Paul. I don't know if you a backlit here, so you probably can't see it. But Paul, WB6CXC, has designed a filter derived from in consultation with Phil and with others, designed a filter that you can put in in front of a 888. That is, I think it's a fourth order Chebyshev or something for 30 megahertz. It's really sharp. It's a good implementation. And it also includes an optional high-pass shelving filter, which is also almost essential for any 888 attached to an antenna, because you're overwhelmed with signals below, on the broadcast shortwave broadcast band filter these days. I mean, it's just you can fry eggs in Europe on the Radio Romania signal, and so you need that. But I think the 888's noise figure is rather poor. It's even worse than the Kiwis. So for above above 10 megahertz, you really need what we've learned in the last week, that the optimal setting for the noise figure of the PGA, right? I don't remember the part number, but Dave, you know it. That programmable gain amplifier that's in front of the A to Z really needs to be set for 20 dB gain, because if you don't have 20 dB gain, its noise figure degrades significantly, and its noise figure isn't particularly good at 20 dB gain, but it gets even worse.
But it also doesn't override the noise of the A to D.
Well, well, you're very much, if you reduce that front end gain, then the noise figure of that PGA becomes the limitation on the whole system.
Right.
So,
but I've read the data sheet on that amp, and it actually, the noise figure improves with increasing gain, but then you run the risk of overloading.
Yeah, so
on,
we found that the compromise, the sweet spot is 20 dB of gain.
Right,
You
I
can't
can believe that.
you can't really you don't gain any noise figure. Maybe 1 dB of noise figure improvement above that, up to I think the maximum of 33 dB is of gain for that is the maximum setting. But at 20 dB of gain, you get the pretty close to the best it can do for noise figure, and it doesn't overload the A to C. I mean, it's very hard to overload the A to D at that point, and a few overloads are actually inevitable if you're given the Gaussian distribution of the 0 to 30 megahertz spectrum. When you're in Europe, and I've been working a lot with European sites, you're going to have out of the 64,000 or million samples, you're going to have a few overload samples just because of the random vector addition of all of these incoming signals. And if you turn down the overall system gain enough so you never have an overload, then you end up with missing the internal noise of the system now becomes the dominant at the higher frequencies. So there's a delicate balance that's required, and this filter is part of the solution for that. Is the shelving filter that you can turn on, suppresses 10 megahertz and below by up to 20 dB, and so that allows you to put additional gain. You need gain in front of the PGA. If you're at a quiet site, you need an additional about 10 dB of gain in front of the 888 in order for you to be limited by the noise coming from the antenna. I mean, that's always your goal. Is you should be able to attach the antenna and see the noise level go up. And if you can't do that, okay, then you've got your receiver is limiting your sensitivity. And many hams, probably most of you who live in urban environments, of course, don't have this problem because you have so much local noise. But at the receive sites that I operated, and many of the people in my Whisper Demon group, that really is the limitation. Is what it turns out that you really need an additional 10 dB gain in front of the 888. You shouldn't build it in. I don't think I would put that additional gain.
My question, yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it in because it really requires that all of this adjustment of filtering and gain. You have to go look at at a site, look at the filter, the spectrum, the 0 to 30 megahertz spectrum, and look at it across 24 hours. Okay, if you don't do that, if you look at daytime, I mean, I log all this in Whisper Demon, so I can tell. I go to a person's site and I say, you had 10% of your samples were overloads from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. and the rest of the day you have no overloads at all. So how do you deal with that? Filtering, change the gain from 5 to 7 a.m. I mean, directional antennas. I mean, there's every site is unique. So don't plan to put it in, put any more gain into the your 888 design, Dave. Just leave it the way it is. But know that for really listen to detect all the signals that could be detected. Many sites are going to require filtering and additional gain in front of the SDR.
Well, I'd really like to collect that knowledge about which of these things, really ought to go in the box, or in some cases go in the box, and which should be accessories that people should part of the toolbox that you point people to and say, look, this has been done. Here's what you need.
Well, for the prototype, I would not worry about any kind of filtering. Let's put that externally.
No, it should be all external.
So far, I'm not.
Yeah, you don't want any extra gain. You don't want any filtering. That needs to be done on a per site basis. But you need to have the filters and the amplifiers available. And actually,
I've got two of those now, so
I don't think Tapper offers such things. Does Tapper have a LNA that they offer? I don't think so.
Oh, no, but I have one of you well, I have two of them somehow.
I have, yeah,
I feel like I owe somebody $30. I'm not quite sure. I got two of them somehow, different different days. I think I got one from you from Half Moon Bay, really quick after.
Oh yeah, I sent you a filter. I did. That's not an amplifier nowadays.
Oh, it's not an amplifier. Okay,
It's a filter. It's a filter.
Okay.
Just to be clear about the ADC capabilities, it can run up to 130 megasample per second, of course. Its front end sample and hold has a 700 megahertz full power bandwidth, which means that it'll be rolling off at 700 megahertz. And so clearly you can do a lot of undersampling work. You can put up to 700 megahertz into it and just sample down at the 130 or even below.
I may be naive, but there may be situations, specific things that people want to look at where those particular characteristics could be very useful.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the more reason to leave the filtering off, at least initially, and have the capability of using different input transformers, because we would be wanting most of what we are doing. You'd want a transformer that's got good response from, say, a megahertz to 50 megahertz. But if you wanted to do the undersampling type of work, you're going to want a different input transformer, though we can find ones that will have pretty close to that bandwidth, but still.
I have no
Mini Circuits has a wide range of those, and Coilcraft. They're all pin compatible, so to speak.
These are the ones. There's a lot of, what is it, Maycom or somebody, the transformers that are used to balance the ununs.
Yeah. Mini Circuits is the most common source for those. Coilcraft is another source that we use a lot.
Yeah, I'm going mostly from the from the LTC Linear Technologies data sheets. Simple design.
Yeah, that's what I'm actually looking at right now.
Yeah, the MA. I don't
know. Well, I'm looking at their data sheet. I don't know if they have do they have the eval board in that, or is that another sheet?
There's a sheet for it.
But anyway, follow their eval board closely and we'll do fine.
That's what I'm doing, except one thing that bothers me a bit too, actually, I'm making a board that I can plug the eval boards into for the time being. And I'm sure that's not optimal, but the eval, but there are 12 or 15 different variants of the 2208 eval board, if you look hard enough, that that have all sorts of different, if you're trying to, and I have mostly the wrong ones, of course, and I'm tired of spending money on them, a couple $100 a pop. But there's there's a particular one that is I think what we're shooting at. The data sheet's pretty much the same, but at the bottom of the data sheets, there's a list, sometimes longer, sometimes others, with a letter suffix on the eval board descriptions, and they're really optimized for different frequency ranges. And some of that I don't entirely understand.
Well, if you need somebody to interpret it, let me know.
I may well be in touch on that one. That's been niggling at me.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any differences. They've got the reference design on the data sheet. Let's see, what do they have? Eval kits. There we are.
Yeah, they have the reference designs there. Several different.
Oh,
So-
I see. There's one that actually is designed for 70 megahertz to 140 megahertz. Then there's one megahertz to 70.
Yeah.
Um,
I have two of them and they're both.
and those are two LVDS outs. Then there's a CMOS out one that's 1 megahertz to 70 megahertz. I see.
Some revisions of that sheet, and others that list is longer or shorter too.
Right. Well, the 1 megahertz to 70 probably is the one to be focusing on.
Is that the P suffix or
B?
B?
Well,
Okay.
I'm a little confused by their numbering scheme. There's a DC 854 DA, which is 1 to 70 CMOS out. Then there's a DC 996B-B that's that's the 70 to 140. No, it's the dash A that's the 1 megahertz to 70 megahertz. They're probably just changing the input transformers.
That's what I assumed. That little input circuit probably varies from board to board a bit. But
and then they have
and
another
even a
CMOS
table.
out. Yeah,
There's
there's a
even
P.
table.
Interesting. They've got the DC 854C-P is A in greater than 140 megahertz. So they're really pushing the subsampling there. That's a demo board for that, doing just that.
Well, there actually is a table somewhere that actually specifies the differences, mostly in those transformers, I think, between those variants. But
in fact, just eyeballing it, they give the schematics. The schematics are identical. It's just the front end components that are changing.
Yeah.
But don't worry about that. Just
I decided not
they have for 1 to 70, and we'll tweak things as we need to.
Yeah. This is why I want to have a prototype that can be, rethought, tweaked. And because I look at this and I can make some guesses as to what's going on, but I don't really trust my, expertise on this subject for sure.
Yep. Well, there are a number of us who have worked with this stuff, so don't be afraid to ask.
Thanks.
So I guess what I understand, Dave, you are in this process of trying to create all these individual schematics based on what you've learned so far.
Well, I'm trying to understand the pieces, the critical pieces, and where these questions come up. And but I've got one thing. I'll show you the specifics of what I'm doing when we meet. That's pretty much it. I wanted to have enough of it on pay, in the CAD package.
Yeah.
That someone else could come along and fix my mistakes, or tweak it for purposes of their own. And as I make no, I make no pretense that I even know what I'm doing on some of these. I'm finding that there are a lot of things to think about. I'm doing a 4-layer board, and I never did a 4-layer board before. And I find there's some things, at least with JLC PCB, they don't do certain kinds of vias, and they do other kinds of vias. And if I have ground planes and stuff buried, how do I get to them? How do I make them, and I had to talk to them today a bit. A lot of things I didn't think about. even though it's not strictly necessary for the immediate. I emailed Oscar and asked him specifically how his boards were made, and he was doing 2-layer boards because he's doing what I'm doing, using the USB 3 module that's pluggable, with that you don't need the Cypress chip. Actually is a BGA chip that's sufficiently complex that you really need 4 layers to design it directly onto a board. But if you use the module, they pinned it all out. Of course, that almost surely comes with some compromises in performance, but he wasn't sure that he'd seen any. He said he thought it was doing as well. But anyway, that gives me the option of if I blow one, if I spill my coffee on it or something, I can plug in a different one. And that makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And I've sent some of this stuff to Majid and to work with these things. He sounded like he was pretty busy with other things, so I haven't worn him out with it, but I'd love to be looking at the software side of this some more too. I haven't really. I finally set up the whole developer kit on a Windows machine where I can use all the little tools that they give you, because a few of them you can do it on Linux, but there are a few visual tools that only work on Windows. But I've tried to make sure that I have everything that's strictly necessary to do this. I was almost at the point of buying a RF frequency generator the other day, because I don't trust the inputs I have. I don't have a lot of antennas like y'all do. I've been intimidated by our local covenants, all 85 pages of them, but I see that one of my neighbors is now putting solar panels on his roof, and that is very explicitly forbidden. So maybe they're falling away. They haven't been able to get anyone to change them because I can't get a quorum. Anyhow, but I thought about buying an RF generator, and then when I was done with it, sending it to you guys or something. But if it proves useful, but I don't know what.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds neat. So I guess on Wednesday
Hope that's on target for what you want.
Yeah, I think so. And I guess I'll be really interested to see like what the different pieces you have you've done in the CAD so far, and how this lines up with the original requirements document for the Tangerine. I guess I want to try and figure out where we are with all of these things.
Well, I want to be able to answer that when we talk. I've also been working with John Ackerman and Glenn. Well, I guess just John directly, but I guess they sent off Glenn's clock design, his GPSDO design, and so I'm working on 100 by 100 millimeter area board, and John gets the other 56 millimeters or whatever it is of the board, or of a second board.
Right.
So and I haven't heard whether they've got anything back yet or where they are lately.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard since the last time I remember you talking about John getting that 55 millimeters. So I guess we'll meet on Wednesday then, and we'll talk about this some more.
Yep.
Dave, are you using KiCad to lay out the PC board?
Yeah,
Yeah.
KiCad.
I can answer questions some if you need me to. I'd be glad to talk to you on the phone about it later. I'm
That-
just finishing up a KiCad board for AMSAT. It's
Uh-huh.
got 4 receivers on it and a transmitter. I chose to use 6 layers because it's got a TI
Right.
TMS 570 processor. And there was just so many lines that needed more layers.
Mhm.
And the VIA situation, the cheapest way to do it is to let the VIAs run all the way through the board, and they'll just connect on the layers that you want them to.
Well, uh-huh. Will
I'm doing 100 by 100 board also, and the board costs, for a 6-layer board, it's about $120, something like that. According to the little calculator they use on their webpage, same site you're looking at.
the 4 layers are real even cheaper is
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that because there's some of this is just lore, more it's not, it's the kind of knowledge you have from being in the business for a long time or thinking about these things in ways that I haven't. And I need, yeah, they finally told me I could put holes through the board. I couldn't do buried vias, but I could do, and I could do through vias, but I didn't understand whether that, on the inner, from the top layer to the bottom board, but I couldn't figure out how I got ground to the ground layer. And I said, oh, just.
Yeah, I can help you with those kind of questions in just a few minutes, probably, if you want to do it later, another time.
Yeah. And I spent hours agonizing over trying to do some stitched boundary around the thing. And KiCad doesn't do it real well, but it's easier to do it manually in the end. But, yeah. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think I'm gonna wrap it up for the night then.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
73 all.
73, everybody.
7-3.